Early Tuesday morning, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders announced he is again running for president, or maybe slowly shuffling for president, or maybe taking a nap in a wheelchair for president, or maybe he actually died 10 years ago and he's going to be the first reanimated president. But the point is, he's back in the game again, revealing his decision through a Twitter video and appearances on CBS's morning news programs. So dust off your Che Guevara shirts, because it's time to finish the revolution.
Revolutions do not happen overnight. We began the political revolution. Now it's time to complete that revolution.
You used to talk about a revolution. Yes. That's what you're talking about here.
That's right.
Revolutions don't happen overnight, and they certainly don't happen when the Night's Watch is the DNC again, so good luck with that. But hey, the more the merrier. I'm excited to see the 2020 show, and it's going to be an even better show with scenes like this.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a tradition. Today, the distinctive feature of our economy is competition.
I wish Russia would have colluded to give him a shirt, but that is a real thing that really happened. I watched Bernie's entire announcement interview on CBS this morning, and I was fascinated by the philosophy of it. Just a glaring case of contradictions and fraudulent moral virtue. When they do it, it's bad. But when I do it, not only is it fine, it's actually morally heroic. Bernie rips the current president as a bigot and a divider. He's a racist and a homophobe and every other kind of ist and phobe you can think of.
We have a president who is a racist, who is a sexist, who is a xenophobe, who is doing what no president in our lifetimes has come close to doing, and that is trying to divide us up. What presidents, even conservative presidents, liberal presidents, they understand their function is to bring our people together. This guy is trying to divide us up.
Really? No president? Not to be overly technical, but FDR interned the Japanese in your lifetime, Bernie. And if you want to get more recent, I thought the Southern strategy was the go-to example of nefarious race-based politics. I'm not looking to revisit the debate, I'm just saying, surely there are worse examples of modern presidential racial divisiveness than Trump's tweets. But don't forget, it's also wrong to be ageist against Bernie Sanders.
As a nation, as we try to stand up and oppose all forms of discrimination, whether it is racism or sexism or homophobia or Islamophobia, whatever it may be, I think we've got to take a hard look at ageism as well. Judge a person on, whether you like them, whether their ideas make sense, whether you think they could do the job, and not just on one criteria about age.
Judge people on their ideas and their deeds, not on any one criteria. Unless, of course, it's the one criteria that Bernie Sanders cares about, the sole criteria that apparently makes division politics not just acceptable, but morally right, your wealth.
That in our country, and you ain't gonna hear anyone else tell you this country is moving toward an oligarchic form of society. We have a small number of billionaires who have enormous economic and political power. We have a corrupt political system in which billionaires can contribute unlimited sums of money. That's the power of the top 1% and the billionaire class.
Jeff Bezos, screw that guy. He's a billionaire.
A company like Amazon, a very profitable company owned by the wealthiest guy in the world.
Howard Schultz, piece of crap. He's rich too.
Why is Howard Schultz on every television station in this country? Why are you quoting Howard Schultz? Because he's a billionaire.
So listen to people's ideas regardless of who they are. Unless they're a billionaire, in which case you can dismiss them. But also, as a millionaire, this automatic dismissal of rich people does not apply to me because reasons. So I guess one criteria judgment of the wealthy is actually perfectly fine. We don't have to listen to Howard Schultz's ideas because he's a billionaire, for example. But what bothers me beyond the hypocrisy of a millionaire lecturing billionaires about the supposed immorality of their wealth are both the practical falsehoods and the philosophical flaws with this perspective. Just as a matter of fact, Bernie insists that the so-called billionaire class is controlling society through financial domination in politics, but this simply isn't true, both as a matter of law and just practical outcome. He says billionaires can contribute unlimited sums of money in politics. Not fully true. Billionaires are just as subject to the same contribution restrictions as the rest of us. $2,800 to candidates, $35,000 to national party committees. It is true that anyone can give unlimited money to independent groups, so-called super PACs, but these groups are legally forbidden from coordinating with any candidate or campaign. So it's not quite giving unlimited money to politics. It's just giving unlimited unlimited money to messages you agree with. And maybe you disagree. Maybe you think that distinction is in fact blurrier than I'm presenting here. I will acknowledge that there is some gray area. There's often a revolving door for campaign personnel who transition over to what are supposed to be independent, non-coordinating political action committees. But even if so, there are still two major problems with what Bernie is saying. One, he's been perfectly fine with these super PACs spending large sums of unlimited money when it's in support of his campaign. And two, the idea that campaign donations control electoral outcomes just isn't consistently true. Take the last election, for example. The Clinton campaign outraised and outspent Donald Trump to the tune of roughly 2-1, and that's true regardless of how you look at it. Official campaign fundraising and spending and affiliated super PACs. Not only that, but Trump raised more in small contributions, donations under $200, than either Sanders or Clinton. We know the massive financial advantage did not translate to victory for either one of them. So no, the evil billionaire class is not controlling politics. There are significant legal obstacles for them to do that, and even when they overcome them, their money is not buying the election outright. And even if it was, why are the electoral preferences of the wealthy inherently bad? Or more simply, why is it inherently bad or morally wrong to be wealthy? He repeats this particular line to that effect.
You have 3 people who own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. We have 3 people in America today who own more wealth than the bottom half of the American society.
And that's just inherently bad because just because someone is wealthy, even extraordinarily wealthy, does not mean there's been injustice. How did that person acquire his or her wealth? Was it through theft, or fraud, or deception, or coercion? If so, sure, then there's a problem. But if that person simply made a product or a service that is massively valuable to society and has become wealthy through a series of voluntary exchanges, then there is no injustice to whine about. He continues with the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez line. Well, it's not the people who are immoral, it's just the system.
What's your opinion of capitalism at its...
Look, I think what we see in this country and around the world is a lot of great entrepreneurs who come up with some great ideas and some great products. But I think what is happening is we have a system which allows these people to accumulate huge amounts of income and wealth.
What do you mean allow? Do you think the system we currently have merely allows the voluntary exchange of goods and services, the voluntary exchange of labor and property? I can't overstate how serious the premise of his statement there is. The only way you can say that you allow people to exchange goods and services is if you believe that you own their labor and their property. That is to say, if your friend sold you his bike for $100, what would you say to me if I said, sure, I'll allow that exchange? You'd probably say, what the hell do you mean allow, Matt? The bike is not your property and therefore the sale is none of your business. And to that criticism, I'll allow it. The point is what you believe fundamentally about labor and property. Who owns it? Are you the sole owner of your labor and your property? Or does everyone else own it collectively? The only way we as a society can allow you to exchange your labor and property is if we as a society actually own your labor and property and can therefore tell you what to do with it. But let's take the rest of his argument. I do actually want to give him the fairest shake possible because shockingly, the guy's ideas do poll very well. I'm not just trying to dunk on him. I want us as a society to think clearly about the philosophy on which he builds. So when Bernie says allow people to get rich, what I think he means is something like a humane society of unprecedented wealth should have a certain baseline standard of living for everybody. And this is where he starts talking about his often mentioned rights to stuff.
When I talk about democratic socialism, you're not talking about the government running the local grocery store or anything else like that. What we are saying is that in America, and by the way, Franklin Delano Roosevelt talked about this way back in the 1940s, that people are entitled not only to certain constitutional political rights, they are entitled to economic rights. Somebody wants to call me a radical? Okay, here it is. I believe that people are inherently entitled to health care. I believe people are entitled to get the best education they can. I believe that people are entitled to live in a clean, environment.
Yeah, that sounds great if only you had a magic wand to eliminate the fundamental economic reality of scarcity. Simply calling healthcare a right does not magically make more hospitals and doctors appear. Simply calling education a right does not magically make more colleges and professors appear. If you want to use that prior grocery store example, simply calling food a right does not magically make more of those stores appear. And I don't know how you can simultaneously say that the government will not run that store, but the goods and services at that store are now a right to which everyone is entitled. You've removed the voluntary exchange and now made it a compulsory exchange. The laws of supply and demand be damned. If you want to talk about being humane, being compassionate, being moral, a voluntary exchange where supply freely meets demand is the most benevolent system there is, far more so than Bernie Sanders compelling commerce at gunpoint because one man supposedly has a right to the labor of another. This interview was fascinating to listen to with all of its double standards and contradictions throughout, but the most fundamental to me were about the nature and legitimacy of power and authority. Bernie Sanders' worldview is based on the idea that power is too centralized in too few. I disagree with his diagnosis that the billionaire class is some big conspiracy ring, but I'm sympathetic with the philosophy that power should be decentralized. We ought to have the most autonomy possible retained by the individual. Bernie himself warns about the supposed authoritarian tendencies of the current president.
You got a president who is a demagogue, a president who is leading us in an authoritarian direction. I would hope that the American people don't believe too much of what he says.
Starting from that principle, I can't understand how he arrives at the conclusion that the federal government, with him running it, should have control over pretty much everything. Your health care.
Bernie Sanders' healthcare for all idea is gaining steam.
Your education.
Free tuition champion, Senator Bernie Sanders.
The environment.
The future of our planet is at stake.
In that context, I'll take a stab and say it's not actually centralized power that he dislikes at all. It's not actually the supposed power of the billionaire class that he dislikes at all. He actually loves their sword. It's just that he wants to wield it. And those are the guys you got to be wary of. He's not saying, let's take power away from people who control your life and give it back to you. He's saying, let's take power away from others and give it to me instead. But I promise I'll take good care of you. Everyone else does centralized authority wrong, but I'll do it right. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel always. Appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below and especially over on Twitter. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to come hang out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.